Good evening. We had some technical difficulties, so I rebooted. Hopefully everyone can hear a little bit better at this point. Let me know if you can. It looks as though everything is coming through a little bit cleaner this time. I'm sorry for those of you that we dropped. We will continue on just talking for about another minute or two and let more people join the room again. Again, thanks for everyone for joining in. We dropped just a few minutes ago. We are picking back up. As soon as we have as many eyes on us as we did before, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for your time. We are at 5:33. We're going to go ahead and get started at 5:34. One more minute. Wait to get some more people in the room. Thank you, guys. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is PJ Capozzi. I am Superintendent of Schools for Meridian 223. We are having some connection issues, so I apologize in advance if anything uh, interrupts your feed. The intent of tonight is to go through our third town hall meeting of six. Then uh, the six town halls are intended to cover roughly the same topics. So as we get more questions that come in from the public, we'll go ahead and cover those in more detail. But I will start each town hall with a rough story of how we got to where we are. The story, I will not go through the full 8 to 10 minutes that I went through the first town hall, assuming that many of the people that are tuning in are repeat customers. If you are not and you have any questions about the background for the referendum, I am happy to clear those up for you. The referendum was passed in November of 2014. Before the referendum was passed in 2014, there was a failed referendum the year before, and working cash bonds were not allowed to be sold as a result of them being petitioned, which means that 10% of the electorate signs a petition and says that the district cannot access that money without it being voted on. At the time the referendum was passed, the district was over $1 million in deficit and had cut 26 positions the February before in order to try to make the budget meet, including within those positions, some programming for kids was lost. So the district was in rough financial position. As such, the district sought a referendum. The district sought a referendum of 0.7 on the education fund. To put into context what 0.7 on the education fund means, is that's roughly about $300 additional for an owner-occupied, non-senior house property value of $150,000. The referendum was also put on a term. A term referendum is pretty rare, particularly in the education fund. The reason that the district decided to pursue a term referendum was really twofold. Number one was when I took over, I was the fifth superintendent in 3 calendar years, and there was a lot of turnover on the board. And just to say it really plainly, there wasn't a ton of trust between the district and the community which it served. So in thinking of going for a term referendum, it was kind of a test to see if the district could earn the trust of the community. The second reason was this: at the time that we went out for referendum, pretty much every poor financial implication impacting the district at the same time was occurring. To explain, we had declining EAV, which means the revenue we were getting from property value was on the decline. The state was not funding the full proportion that it was supposed to for general state aid. So we're getting a decrease in money from the state. We're getting a decrease in money from local EAV. On top of that, we owed the landfill money as a result of them being overtaxed and the district capturing that money uh, when it was possible for them. So, in combination of that, what we had termed during the first referendum was that there was a perfect storm of financial activity. So, the question why we went for a term referendum was we were unclear if we needed the money, the revenue from the referendum when times were good. And we had essentially good times in the 6 year sense. So we had the increased money coming in from the referendum. EAV started to go back up, and the state started to fund the school and the district at the level that it said it was going to at 100% of its rate. And so, with all of these things happening positively for the district, we are still funded at what the district calls is 68% of adequacy. So, with all of the things trending in the right direction, we are at 68% of adequate. And as a result, that is why the referendum that is put before you is not a term referendum. We have had positive financial climate and considerations for us, and we still are not funded in a way that allows us to pursue really rapidly the goals that we have set forth for ourselves. So the the reason why we have not asked for an extension of the term and why we are asking for this referendum to be permanent is simply because what we have found is that in good financial times, in order for us to pursue what we want to and to try to enact our vision and mission, we need the additional revenue that's come forward. The second question that we get quite often is how much is the increase? And there is no increase. So I can say this lots of times, but I think people still get the ability for us to tax in the education fund right now, we tax at a rate of 3.48. We will continue to tax at a rate of 3.48 permanently if the referendum passes. The argument would be say that this is technically an increase, and that argument comes from the fact that if this referendum fails over the next 2 years, there would be a decrease in taxes. So I know it's a confusing argument, but what we're trying to share is whatever you paid on your tax bill, that tax rate in the education fund will not change if you vote yes on this referendum. Now, if you vote no over a year and a half, then what will happen is that rate may come down. But I want to be very clear that this is not a tax increase based on what you've paid the last 5 years. So again, the way that the tax that you would pay more in taxes is if your property goes up in value. As the district, we would control the rate. The property may escalate or not escalate based on the conditions surrounding your house and its own property value. So those are the two big questions that we've consistently received since the first town hall that I wanted to focus on is why not a term referendum? And again, just to answer that succinctly, we are living in good financial conditions right now. And over the last 2 years, we've had a balanced budget. So which means that if we were to not receive the funding from the referendum, which is roughly $1.3 million per year, what we are saying is that we would need to then find $1.3 million per year to remove from our budget. And while the board and I have decided that we're not going to talk about specific cuts at this time, what we would say is that to get $1.3 million out of a budget that is already at 68% of adequacy would be some really tough, difficult decisions that we'd have to enter into to make that work. So that's why we're not looking for another term referendum. That's why we're looking for the extension of this permanently. And the second question, again, is this a tax increase? And this is not a tax increase based on what you've paid the last 5 years. Compared to what you paid 6 years ago, yes, this is a tax increase. But from the last 5 years, this is not an increase in the education fund rate. So at this point, I see I have 49 people watching. I don't see a ton of comments or questions. I would love any comments or questions in the comment box. While I wait for that, I'll go over a couple of the other frequently asked questions we have, hopefully having this populate so that I can engage more directly with the questions that the community has for me at this point. So one of the questions that we received in the last Facebook town hall was a question directly pertaining to my salary and what that looks like compared to, and this wasn't the exact question, but I think it's only fair to compare it to other regional superintendents in past previous administrations within the district. So what we did is we constructed a document that used the information that was provided on each of the district's websites within our county, and then we looked at that per pupil. So basically, what are people paying their district office administrators, so their superintendents, their assistant superintendents, and directors per pupil? And when we look at that, uh, not only are we paying district office administrators less than every other district in the county, we're also paying less than we paid in 2012 in our own district. So that's why um, that's a question. I can give you the guys the documentation. It was sent to all parents and it's on our website. But if anyone wants that information, please let me know and I'm glad to get it to you. Crystal, that's a great question. So thank you very much for asking it. The reason is we are in roughly peak financial conditions for what you could expect for a school district. The state has been increasing what they're paying us each year over the last 4 years. This year is different with the pandemic, but for the 4 years prior, they were paying us an increase each year, and EAVs are on the rise. With all of those positive financial conditions, the district is still only at 68% of adequacy. So what the reason our district needs to tax is largely, and this directly impacts you guys as a taxpayer, we have a very limited amount of commercial or industry property. So there's not, to use the Byron example, there's not a nuclear plant which we can rely on for that funding. And so without that coming in, and without any long-term, very viable economic development happening within the district, we are just fundamentally in a place where uh, we are somewhat stuck in terms of what we're going to be able to do. So I don't anticipate the financial conditions of this district in proportion to the state dramatically changing for the better than where we're at. And like I said, right now we're at 68% of adequacy. So with this extending ad infinitum or permanently allows us to make some other decisions and to plan beyond just 5 to 10 years. And so the reason why a taxpayer, if I was in your shoes as a taxpayer, a reason why I would be skeptical is, well, can I really trust that the district is going to do what's best with the money that I've been allocating to them through my property tax? And so for that, I would say, I hope that we've earned your trust over the last 6 years. And if you look at your tax rate over the last 6 years, it's moved from a 6.03 to a 5.71, which means that we are doing our 5.75. We are decreasing your taxes anytime that we can, trying to be fiscally responsible to our community. So we're not maximizing every possible rate all the time. And so to synthesize that answer down, one, we hope we've earned your trust. Two, that even with this money coming in, we are still dramatically underfunded based on what the state said is going to be necessary to reach standards for kids. And three, again, the number is 1.3 million. So without this in the budget, that's 1.3 million gone. So the question that I would ask you is that if we're operating on a balanced budget, at what point do you think we are going to not need 1.3 million based on the services we provide kids now? That's not with doing anything new or creative or innovative or adding programs. So taking 1.3 million out, when is that going to be a rational decision for the school to say we don't need that 1.3 million? As taxpayers, that's fundamentally your right to make that decision. That's why it's a referendum, it's on the ballot. But that's why we're not seeking a short term and we're looking at this as a more permanent solution. Give a few more minutes, hopefully some more questions populate. One of the questions that we get, which is very related to the answer I just gave, is what are we going to get with this additional money we're giving? And so there's the answer to that's twofold. One is that it's not additional compared to what it was the last 5 years. And the second is you kind of already purchased the things which would be that you would get from this. And so just going to go over very quickly what some of the things that we have done over the last 5 years with this money. And that way you guys can determine as consumers, right, as taxpayers, as to how we've spent this money and whether it's been appropriate. We added a counselor at the elementary school. So I think a lot of people forget how drastic the reductions were 5 and 6 years ago. So we were understaffed in our most critical areas. So we've added a counselor at Highland, we've added a special education teacher at Highland, and we've added teachers in general to decrease class size. We also are not a recipient of the pre-K grant from the state, so the state doesn't pay for our pre-K. We get no reimbursement for that. But as a district, we've decided pre-kindergarten is a vital experience that we want to provide for our community. So this year, notwithstanding because of the pandemic, but other than that, the district has decided to fund pre-kindergarten at its cost. So that's another thing that we've contributed to it. We've implemented the Leader in Me program. So those of you that have students in the K-8 levels at this point, you've experienced this and you can see the positive impacts that it's starting to have for us. As a reminder as to where we were technologically 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the federal government said that we needed to take our state standardized assessments on technology. And I had to write a waiver to the state saying, this is how poor our technology is. We can't do this. Can we please do it on paper and pen? And we had to do that for multiple years. And now we have ubiquitous Wi-Fi in the district. We're able to stream classes at the high school, pipe it into people's homes. Every student has a Chromebook. So our technological transformation that's been funded largely through this referendum has been amazing, to the point where we had to ask other districts for help in the past, and now other districts are coming to us for help. So we've had a complete transformation in terms of trying to get our district more into the 21st century. And I think that not only have we closed that gap, I think that we've caught up, and I think that we're current. There's a number of software programs that your kids are experiencing right now. All of those software programs, with the exception of Google Classroom, cost money. And so many of these were added pre-pandemic because we thought they could help support us and help us individualize our instruction for kids. If you've been in our buildings, you'll notice a ton of safety improvements. One of them, and probably most notably and most visibly, is the fact that we have a school resource officer now. So that's a heavy investment that we've made to create a better and safer learning environment for our kids. We've expanded the music department this past year. Another one of the reductions that we had was in music. So we had previously expanded the art program, and now we've expanded the music program. And the list goes on and on and on. But I just wanted to share with you guys a handful of things. When people say, what am I going to get for this? It's an extension of what you've already gotten. And so if we were put in a position where, again, running on a roughly balanced budget the last 2 years, to say that $1.3 million has to come out of that, then we're starting to make some tough decisions about what our class sizes are going to look like, what our offerings for kids are going to look like, what our buildings are going to look like, in order to make those ends meet. I will go silent for a few minutes. We have 54 people watching now. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I would love if you threw a question into the stream so that I could answer it for you. All right, we're up to 59 people watching. Does anyone have a question? It'd be wonderful to answer some questions coming from the community. If you would like to put them into the comments, I could address whatever questions you have directly. There's a couple questions that I guess I'm getting from some of my people that, okay. Is this a unique situation? I've never known a voting yes for referendum not have taxes go up from the current rate. Yeah, so Gary, this is an extremely unique situation, I guess. So this is the first time I've tried to ask this question as well. But we went to the attorneys to get the language to put within the ballot so that we had everything up to code. There was no legal precedent for this. So this is an interesting situation where we're extending a current referendum to move forward. It happens in some situations where people have bonds dropping off, and instead of the bonds dropping off, they do it. But this is a different where we're extending an existing referendum from the 2014. Yes, Scott, the overall budget has gone up each year. So that is 100% accurate. We are dropping the rate, which again, we don't have to do, but we're choosing to do because the EAV is going up. So instead of claiming everything that we could possibly claim, we are leaving some money theoretically on the table in order to not, again, adversely affect taxpayers any more than we need to get done what we need to get done at a given time. Yeah, so Amy, that is correct. So it's for an owner-occupied house that is not senior citizen, so a non-senior citizen owner-occupied house that is a property value of $150,000. The increase that was paid was $309. So that is that is what would eventually drop off if the referendum is voted no. Sorry, Gary. Um, just quite honestly, I wasn't scrolling down, so it took me it took me a while to see that. So I apologize for not answering it sooner. If the referendum does not pass, could it negatively affect junior high sports? So the position of the district at this point is not to discuss potential cuts in terms of this would go or that would go. If we are at a $1.3 million budget shortfall, there would be significant cuts. And so that would be the decision of the superintendent at that time, and the board to determine what cuts would have to be made in order to, again, try to best enact the mission and vision with the reduced amount of capital that they would be having coming in. Sandy, we do not have the estimate as to what the EAV will be for Ogle County at this point. If you're asking from the last levy year, we increased our, we had about 4.9% additional, 4.9% additional revenue. And again, this was another year that we did not capture everything to its fullest extent because the property values did go up so much. That's why you see the rate go down a little bit. So we did not hold the rate constant. Instead, we just took it at 4.9%. Aslan, we have not said anything about teacher positions being eliminated. So, and when I say we have not said, I want to be very clear. We have a year and a half to make those decisions if the referendum fails. So we have not, just truthfully and transparently, not even begun those conversations internally at this point. So any projections or prognostications as to what would be cut or whatever is simply that. Like, they quite literally have not occurred at this point. Now, if you want to do the math on what 1.3 million looks like, then that's totally fair for you to do. But that's at this point we have not had those types of conversations. So, Sandy, I don't have that number off the top of my head. 4.9% in dollars, and again, this is where school finance gets interesting, and it's different than a lot of other taxing bodies. So, 4.9% is across all of our funds. This referendum is pertaining directly to the education fund. So for us, we procure usually about 6.5 million, I believe, in the ed fund from taxes, and about 11 million overall. So it's a significant amount. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, but as I've explained, those, like, as we are getting these resources, what we're doing is deploying them against our goals in order to try to best serve students. So as tax, so I think there's a really common misconception that Sandy's not asking, but she gave me a window in to kind of go down this route. If the state funding is flat, which I can't expect the state funding to be anything but flat given the current economic state of the state, then the only way we would procure additional revenues would be from seeking outside grants, which we do, but those opportunities are limited. And then it be through increase and property value. So as the EAV goes up, and if we tax at the same rate, then we would get that amount of money. If the EAV goes up 3% and we tax at the same rate, we'd get 3% additional dollars. And that seems like we have more money to do more stuff with. But when we have 75 to 78% of our expenditures are on salaries and benefits, so if there's a 2% raise for all staff, then that gets eaten up really quick. And so we haven't even started talking about equipment repairs yet. We haven't started talking about technology that we need, that obviously you guys know technology doesn't last forever, and that's a cyclical buying process. We haven't talked about the increase in gas and electric and all of those things. So our costs continue to increase. So simply by EAV moving up over time isn't going to satisfy our needs, and that's not going to close that $1.3 million gap for us anytime soon. So when EAV goes up, does it help us operate? Absolutely, and we're appreciative and we're thankful for the dollars that come in. The issue is that does not sustain us, and it certainly wouldn't sustain us when we would have to look at what $1.3 million to a deficit does. Okay, I think I've scrolled to the bottom now. I'm sorry that there was user error there and I wasn't seeing the questions. I'll give another little bit of a break so that you guys can ask any additional questions, um, and see if there's anything else that I can help out with before we conclude the town hall. Okay, at this point, I'm seeing no additional questions. So I would be happily answer any questions that come up between now and our next town hall. My phone number is 815-980-0310. That's my cell phone number. I gave it out last town hall. I got a few prank calls, but we'll deal with that. So if you have any questions, feel free to text or call me anytime. And my email address is plastered all over the website for anyone that has questions on that. There is a chance that if people see this later and add questions to the comments, they might get lost. So if you ask a question after watching this not live, please feel free to go ahead and send that to me directly. Our next town hall is Tuesday at 5:30. All of them are Tuesday at 5:30 over the next coming weeks. Next week is at Davis Junction Fire Department. Capacity of 50, spacing and social distancing and masking the way that we're requiring our students to do it. The following week is Facebook Live again, and then the following week after that is Monroe Center. So hopefully we go from there. The landfills and farms being key business tax issues. Curious to know about the bank. I don't know what the bank pays directly. I know I don't know what their actual contribution is. If we get new business in town, could our rate go down? Absolutely. So again, by the time we get new business in town, there's very likely a different board and a different superintendent sitting in here. So I don't feel like I can promise anything. But as the base goes up, then the rate that we're charging to get the same amount of dollars or the number of dollars necessary to operate would change. The same condition that's going to happen in a neighboring town if their large property value um, is no longer in town, then they're going to have to find a different way to make up those things. So certainly, if we have industry come to town, would that be beneficial for us? 100%. The issue is that most industries that's attracted to any area right now, a lot of times come in under a TIF. And if they come in under TIF, that oftentimes means that they won't pay taxes for 23 years of additional increase to the property that they've procured. So in those cases, that's a long time before the district would realize that cash. Correct, Crystal. You're absolutely correct in the education fund. So again, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, underpromise and overdeliver. So the rate may fluctuate a 0.02 or 0.03 here or there based on certain things, and then there are certain elements that we can't foresee that I always don't want to overpromise for. So for instance, when people ask, well, what could that be? Well, if the district were to get sued and we had a large settlement, so that money has to come from somewhere. So things like that would impact the rate, but just typical operating would not dramatically impact. And the reason for that is that we typically tax near the top of what we can do in the funds. And school finance is this weird nebulous thing to understand. So, and I can go through that with any of you guys that want to, but the overall, the education fund rate would not be an increase nor decrease, and you would only pay more on the education fund if there was an increase in your property tax value, and you would pay less if there was a decrease in your property tax value. Give it another couple minutes if anyone has any questions. We're at 6:02. I will kind of go silent until about 6:04. If there's more questions, I'll answer them at that time. If not, I will sign off. Thank you, Gary. Great questions. If you have any other questions, you said this, I think I saw that you said this was your first one attending. So if you have any questions, shoot me a call or an email and I'll gladly help out. Sandy, I'm not sure if you're still on. It was $426,000 additional in the education fund as a result of the large EAV increase this year. Scrolling back through one more time, I don't see any comments that were missed at this time. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for giving your time up on a Tuesday evening to learn more about this. Please feel free to share my information with anyone that has any questions. Again, as a district, it is not, or as the representative of the district, I cannot advocate for or against the referendum. My job is to make sure people have as much factual information as possible. Thank you very much. Make it a great day.